Clarence has 130 episodes, but these 3 are the most disturbing. Starting off with number 3, Straight Illin', which is actually banned from airing due to its unsettling and disturbing visuals. The episode kicks off in the school cafeteria where Jeff, Sumo, and friends take turns daring Clarence to do ridiculous things. But then Belson, jealous of the attention Clarence is getting, dares him to eat 500 deviled eggs. This is beyond a dare. This is self-inflicted suffering in the name of attention, assuming this will finally shut Clarence down, only for Clarence to take things up a notch by inviting the entire school to witness the event. I mean, who would say no to front row seats to this show? Later, in Clarence's backyard, Jeff and Sumo stare at the 2 massive tables stacked with hundreds of deviled eggs. Jeff tries to reason with Clarence, warning him that eating 500 of anything is a terrible idea. But the moment the crowd started cheering, Clarence was all in. He stuffs his mouth egg after egg, getting slower, sicker, and visibly uncomfortable as the challenge nears its end. Even Belson is shocked that Clarence has even made it this far, and then somehow Clarence forces the final egg down his throat, securing his victory. The crowd erupts in cheers, but Belson is left fuming. The way Clarence progressively looks worse and worse is genuinely unsettling. By the end, he's basically a walking biohazard. The next day, Jeff, Sumo, Belson, and Percy are playing ball when Clarence appears looking pretty gross, if I'm being honest. Sorry bro, I can see why this episode got banned because this image alone is trauma-inducing for kids for sure. Hello nightmares. His skin is pale and sweaty, he's coughing and sneezing uncontrollably, and his stomach seems to still be full of eggs literally touching his knees. He asks his friends to play. The boys, genuinely disturbed by his appearance, ask if he's sure he's okay to play. And Clarence, desperately wanting to play, insists that he is. But his buddies, being grossed out by the literally sick spit flying out his mouth, quickly come up with excuses as to why they can't play and run off. And of course, Belson, who loves messing with Clarence straight up, tells Clarence his face looks gross before running away. At this point, I kind of feel really bad for him. That was extra mean. The next day in class, Jeff and Sumo whisper about how bad Clarence looks. Then the horror! Clarence shows up at the door looking absolutely disgusting. When I tell you, I literally could not even stare at him for too long. Everyone is grossed as he shuffles into the room. His face is swollen, his eyes sunken. There is literal green snot dangling on his upper lip. He proudly announces that he's made his own currency, Clarence dollars. But Belson dismisses it, saying he already did that 100 years ago. So Clarence digs through his bag to find something else to impress everyone. But in the process, with his violent coughing and sneezing, send germ-infested mucus flying everywhere, Ms. Baker tells Clarence he needs to see the nurse. But he insists he's fine whilst choking on some snot and goes to his seat. Why did they have to be this detailed down to the coughing and snot sounds? I wanted to peel my ears off. Horrified, the other students scoot their desks away. I mean, look at him. Ew. Sumo and Jeff devise a plan to get Clarence to see the nurse because after all, they feel bad for him. At lunch, Clarence is struggling to even eat pudding, food going into his eyeball, his hands shaking. He tries to blow his crush a kiss and man, look at that spit string. She immediately hides her face. And honestly, I think we all agree with her when she did that because I honestly would not even want him looking at me either. Meanwhile, Jeff and Sumo put a desperate plan into action. Jeff, speaking through a walkie-talkie, tells Sumo, who is crawling through the air vents above the cafeteria, to get into position. However, the loud fans make communication difficult, and Sumo ends up yelling into the device. Clarence, teeth falling and everything, hears this and immediately assumes it's some kind of game. When Jeff tries to abort the mission, Clarence creepily pops up behind him, wheezing and breathing heavily. Jeff tries to get away, but Clarence follows him, stumbling like a zombie. Jeff sprints. At this point, I'm yelling at my TV, "Run, Jeff, run!" He hides in a closet and escapes into the air vents where Sumo is already stuck. As they argue about what to do, Clarence suddenly appears behind them, literally cracking his neck to the side saying, "I see you!" How did they manage to turn a simple sickness into a full-blown, disturbing nightmare scene? In a way, I feel bad for Clarence. He just wants to play with his friends and impress them, but at the same time, this is so disturbing. He lets out a monster sneeze, which blasts germs all over the vents, effectively spreading an airborne plague throughout the entire school. And at that moment, unable to escape, Clarence catches up to his buddies and the air ducts give way under their weight. The 3 of them come crashing down, right into the nurse's office, where a massive line of sick students is already waiting. Nathan immediately blames Clarence for making everyone sick. The next thing you know, Belson appears announcing that he's going to outdo Clarence by eating 600 eggs. Like, really? Read the room, buddy! But just as he starts, the principal comes over the intercom with an announcement. Due to the outbreak of the egg virus, school is canceled for an entire week. The students erupt in cheers, celebrating Clarence as a hero for giving them time off. I guess in the end, he still ends up impressing his friends anyway. They all run out of the building, leaving Belson behind, still shoveling scrambled eggs into his mouth. Attention seeker much. This episode is disturbing because it pushes gross-out humor to extreme levels. Clarence's deterioration from overeating is unsettling. How vividly it depicts sickness, infection, and unhygienic chaos. From his sweaty, swollen, germ-covered body, combined with the airborne plague scene, it genuinely made me want to throw up. It likely got banned because it crossed the line from funny to outright disgusting, making it one of the most stomach-churning episodes of Clarence. His desperate need for attention leads him to physically ruin himself, and even as his body clearly falls apart, he refuses to acknowledge reality, creating a literal, disturbing experience for everyone. Moving on to number 2, Lil Buddy. Clarence excitedly shows his class a very trippy ad for a toy called Lil Buddy, before proudly pulling out his very own one-eyed, beat-up Lil Buddy. Someone has got to say it, but Clarence needs to put that creepy thing out of its misery. Just look at it! Yikes! At recess, he tries to get the other kids to play with it, but they denied. Then he tried again, and got denied again. Is he not going to get the hint? No one wants to touch that thing. He then spots another innocent victim, Reed. When he pushes Reed to interact with it, Reed freaks out, falls into the sandbox, and starts crying. Let's be honest, Reed was barely touched. But his overreaction just doomed Clarence to a psychological downward spiral. Nice job, Reed. Mrs. Shoop immediately blames Clarence and gives him a 5-minute timeout, forced to sit out while everyone else plays. Clarence mentally begins to lose it. In his mind, years go by as he watches his childhood slip away in a dramatic hallucination of the rest of the world down to its end and beginning again. What are the dinosaurs doing here? Shoop literally turns to bones, then bam! His vision snaps back to reality, the existential crisis of a lifetime. 5 minutes in kid time equals eternity. Ms. Shoop informs him that his timeout ended 5 minutes ago, but just as he gets up to play, the bell rings. Ms. Shoop offers zero sympathy. Clarence's eyes filled with tears. A true villain. Seriously, did we all have a school figure like this? I even feel bad for the guy. In chemistry class, Clarence is too emotionally drained to care about the fun experiment. Not even Sumo's attempts to cheer him up help. I think something broke in him. Later that night, Clarence, now furious about missing recess, mimics Ms. Shoop. And next thing you know, he sends Lil Buddy flying across the room at the wall, literally ripping its arm off. Clarence backs up into the wall, traumatized. Reminds me of when you stub your toe on the edge of the couch and then you try to rip the couch to shreds, just a bit dramatic. Clarence decides to ride his bike in the rain with Lil Buddy on his back, splashing Ms. Baker on the way. Once in the park, he quickly digs a hole and buries Lil Buddy and covers himself in dirt. On one hand, it's like he's laying a friend to rest, but on the other, it feels more like he was trying to hide the evidence, hide a literal body. This part had eerie vibes to it. The next day, Mary tries cheering Clarence up on the way to school, but he remains unresponsive with no expression on his face whatsoever. Then a montage follows, showing Clarence becoming increasingly detached and depressed. He no longer enjoys playing with his friends. He stops caring about school. He even stops liking recess. He sells his toys. He paints his room black. Then eventually the worst happens. He literally shaves his head bald and wears a black hoodie. I'm not sure if that's eyeliner or dark circles, but under his eyes turned black and he completely becomes an absolute menace, securing detention. After detention, after detention. I guess Clarence has entered his full emo phase. The transformation is so severe that even Belson, the school bully, takes notice. He tells Clarence that he actually looks kinda cool now. If your worst enemy respects your breakdown, you might actually be going through it, but Clarence, fully withdrawn, doesn't even acknowledge him. Then at recess, Clarence does the unexpected. He is literally fully dressed as Lil Buddy, trying to get Jeff to hold the broken arm. As Ms. Shoop is about to blow her whistle, Clarence snaps at her and threatens her not to— He literally lost it, guys. This isn't cosplay. This is an identity crisis. He absorbs the personality of the thing he lost. And just as they engage in an intense standoff, and I mean the tension could be cut with a knife, Belson pulls down Clarence's pants in front of everyone, making the entire playground burst into laughter. Something inside Clarence snaps. He punches Belson right in his big nose. Ouch! Then he knocks down another kid cheering for him. Later, Clarence sits alone in the cool-off zone, while the other kids watch from outside, discussing the rumors about what will happen to him. You ever see someone hit rock bottom and you're just standing there witnessing it? That's the kids in this scene. He is eventually sent to the principal's office to get his special punishment, where Ms. Baker is waiting for him. She gently talks to Clarence, and in a surprising turn of events, she pulls out his Lil Buddy covered in dirt. I wonder why he's covered in dirt. Flashback to him literally being buried alive anyways. This instantly lifts Clarence's spirits. She even acknowledged that it was unfair that he missed recess, so she gives him his own private recess. Clarence, overjoyed, hugs Ms. Baker and runs outside to play. This is peak let's just fix this before it gets worse, teaching. As he happily plays with Lil Buddy, we see flashes of the seemingly dreamy TV ad, and then we see the reality. Clarence and Lil Buddy just look quite disturbing. But at least he's happy. The other kids watch him from the window. Sumo, relieved, says, "We got our old Clarence back." This episode is disturbing because it turns an innocent moment of disappointment into a full psychological breakdown. Clarence's obsession with Lil Buddy represents how kids latch onto objects to cope with loneliness and rejection. But when that comfort is taken away, he spirals into grief. identity loss, and emotional detachment. His slow descent from sulking to isolating himself to literally becoming the toy is unsettling. It's also disturbing because it captures the raw pain of childhood humiliation. The pantsing scene, the laughter, and Clarence's violent reaction show what happens when a kid feels completely powerless. His outburst isn't just anger, it's years of bottled up emotions exploding at once. Watching a normally joyful character lose himself completely makes this one of the most unsettling episodes of Clarence. And finally, the most disturbing in dreams. The episode starts with Clarence goofing around outside, trying to explode a pineapple with a pump, one of his usual bizarre games. As Mary backs out of the driveway, she tells Clarence to make sure he closes the garage door before going inside, otherwise possums might get in. Clarence agrees to do it. Later, Clarence and Chad are sitting on the couch watching a documentary about dreams. Chad, as usual, is already asleep, and half-awake Clarence remembers Mary's warning and rushes to close the garage door. Then he settles back onto the couch and almost falls asleep, and then he remembers he forgot the garage door open, so he does it again. Wait, what? I thought my brain glitched for a second. But when he came back, a mysterious boy was sitting on the couch. A confused Clarence asks who he is, but the boy simply says, "I'm Jeremy." The way he never explains himself makes him feel less like a friend, more like an entity. As they continue to watch the dream show, Jeremy hands Clarence a yo-yo, which breaks instantly, but Jeremy, unfazed, pulls out another one. Meanwhile, the dream documentary on TV mentions dream signs, little clues that tell you when you're dreaming. Clarence decides to check for the signs, checking the remote, counting his 7 fingers, and removing like 50 shoes. He didn't realize he was dreaming till he saw a size 2 on the shoes, and realized it's not his size, and he realized the truth. He's dreaming. His own mind was literally screaming at him that he's dreaming, and he just kept ignoring it. What follows is a whimsical, chaotic dream adventure, as Clarence and Jeremy embrace the weirdness of the dream world, manifesting mutant animals, launching a pineapple rocket through space, colliding planets, and even shrink-raying themselves to pick snacks from the fridge. As they munch on the giant food, Clarence asks Jeremy what happens to him when Clarence wakes up, but weirdly Jeremy doesn't answer. Instead, he suggests they watch more TV, because deep down, I think both Jeremy and Clarence already know what happened, which just adds an extra eerie vibe to this scene. It makes you truly wonder what happens to the people in your dreams. Do they exist somewhere just sitting waiting for you to come back so they can live again? Meanwhile, in real life, Chad wakes up and starts calling for Clarence. Clarence hears him in the dream, but Jeremy reminds him that no one can hear him. Yikes, it's like Jeremy is slowly becoming super creepy. As Chad reminds Clarence that Mary will be home soon, it suddenly hits him. The garage door. Jeremy insists Clarence already closed it, but Clarence isn't sure. In the dream, the garage door appears closed, but something feels off. In reality, Clarence is still asleep on the couch. And outside, the garage door is wide open. And the worst, possums start creeping inside too. Why do they have to even make the possums look disturbing? Or is that just how they naturally look? Back in the dream, Jeremy tries to distract Clarence with a huge party celebrating his success. Everyone, from his friends conjoined in a giraffe, floating teachers, talking condiments, and a giant nose, to his mom, is there, congratulating him for closing the door. But when Clarence watches a replay of his supposed achievement, something's wrong. It shows him zooming off like a car, leaving tire tracks behind. That never happened. He realized it's all a lie. The dram guy from the TV appears explaining how we can control our minds in dreams. But determined to fix things, Clarence hatches a bizarre plan. If he can't wake up, maybe he can sleepwalk and close the door in real life. The most chaotic, problem-solving attempt ever. He tries really hard and almost has it, but Jeremy won't let him. Every time Clarence tries to focus, Jeremy appears distracting him, pulling him into wild adventures. As Clarence fights to concentrate, he begins sleepwalking in real life, but Jeremy becomes even more desperate trying to distract him. But Clarence ignores them, completely focused on his goal. In real life, Clarence sleepwalks into the garage, and Jeremy multiplies trying to distract him, begging him not to. At the same time, Mary's car pulls up, and she sees him standing there, eyes closed, as possums run wild inside. Imagine pulling into your driveway and seeing your kids standing there, eyes closed, waiting for you. I would honestly think they were possessed and drive away. What? Inside the dream, Jeremy looks terrified. He begs Clarence not to wake up, but the real world is dragging Clarence back. As the dream collapses, Jeremy finally answers the questions. He tells Clarence if he wakes up, he will forget about Jeremy. Clarence tries to stop. He didn't want him to forget Jeremy, but it was too late. The way he begs makes it feel like Clarence is erasing something that was never supposed to go away, like Jeremy is real. Back to reality, Clarence collapses, but Mary catches him just in time. Instead of yelling, she tells him she's only a little mad for leaving the garage open. As they walk inside, Clarence excitedly tells her about his dream. And creepily, the episode ends with the man from the dream documentary appearing one last time saying, "Dream sign," before closing the garage door. This episode is disturbing because it blurs the line between dreams and reality, creating a creeping sense of unease. Jeremy represents a part part of Clarence's subconscious that desperately doesn't want to be forgot, making his final plea, "Please remember me," strangely haunting. The way Clarence keeps doubting what's real, combined with the eerie feeling that something is always off, makes the entire episode feel like a slow descent into a surreal nightmare. This episode is disturbing because it explores the eerie, fragile nature of dreams, and how easily reality can slip away. The entire episode plays with lucid dreaming, confusion, and the terrifying idea that the people in our dreams cease to exist when we wake up. Jeremy represents a figment of Clarence's subconscious, one that desperately doesn't want to be forgotten. But as Clarence becomes more self-aware, Jeremy grows more desperate, multiplying and clinging onto him. His final plea to remember him is unsettling, making the audience wonder, does Jeremy exist in some form, or is he just a fading illusion? On top of that, the episode builds a creeping sense of dread with the repeated garage door dilemma. Every time Clarence thinks he closed it, he gets a nagging feeling that he didn't, and sure enough, in reality, the possums have invaded. The fact that Clarence nearly sleepwalks into traffic just makes the whole thing feel even more unsettling. By the end, Clarence is back to reality, but the unease lingers. The episode leaves you questioning what's real, what's just a dream, and what parts of the dream world stay with us even after we wake up. Subscribe to the channel, guys. Don't just watch the video, get me to 1,000 subs!